Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We have the pleasure of having one of our partners with us, Continia. Mark and Chris will be presenting on It's About Time. Wipe out 90% of your manual tasks and paper with Business Central. And as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website at innovia.com. We do encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them answered during our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mark to kick off our presentation.
Thank you very much, Angie. As always, tremendous job coordinating all of this and supporting us and our partnership. So thank you. Appreciate that, and appreciate everybody carving out some time to spend with us this morning. I hope you have a good cup of coffee in your hand. We're going to get you a little excited about a lot of possibilities with your organization, and we'll dive into that in a second. I'm Mark Rhodes, and I am on the team with Continia. I've been here just over a year now. Joining me is Chris DeVisser. He's been here a lot longer than me. Hey, Chris.
Good morning. It's only 4 years now.
And so together we're going to walk through a couple of our solutions and cover a whole lot of ground very fast here. We will put our emails in the chat along the way, so if you'd like to follow up with us, but really the primary follow-up will be with your Innovia customer representative, and we would love to do a specialized demo for you or talk to you about how our solutions would fit in with your organization. Just let Innovia know at any point during the webinar today. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. I see a couple more folks joining. Welcome if you're just joining. We're going to cover basically an overview of our solutions, and then we'll dive into document capture and expense management in particular. And Chris is going to show you the wow behind the solutions and go through a couple of quick demos with you. We talk about it being about time, and that has multiple meanings. But for us, our entire 30 years of producing software has been focused around saving people, saving organizations time, not only saving them time, but allowing them to reallocate their time on things that are, one, a lot more interesting, but then two, a lot more important and strategic in terms of driving their organization forward. And so not only do we focus our solutions on saving you time, but also just how we produce solutions, how you use the solutions, how we support you and support Innovia. It's all around time as well. We try to be as efficient and as easy to do business with as possible. And so it really comes into play in a number of factors. We provide free on-demand training. We provide our help documentation just out on the website, so it's very easy to get to. And just in terms of installing the solution, all of those things, we're focused on saving you time, and that really permeates every day in terms of usage. One of those key ways is just how we're built. We are built inside Business Central. We're going to talk a lot about that, but again, that really saves you time every day, and it's very important kind of key go-to-market strategy for us, because again, we want to make sure that we can't talk about being a time-saving solution and then cause you to spend a lot of time using it, right? So we'll show that to you in a couple different ways. All right, so if you are still processing invoices or processing other types of incoming documents and handling employee expenses and corporate credit card expenses, sending out statements and reminders from Business Central or NAV, and doing that manually, a lot of these points on this slide certainly resonate with you. I've been part of it for quite a while, just in my various roles, and I've seen firsthand. Just honestly, to be honest, how draining it can be, right? Nobody likes rekeying data from a piece of paper into a system. Nobody likes chasing people around for information or approvals. And again, we want to get you taking advantage of the technology that does this very, very well now, and again, refocus your time. So if any of this resonates with you, we are here to help. Now, instead of kind of fixing problems, let's look at what's possible, right? And again, it being about time. Certainly automating these processes, there's a lot of benefits that are readily apparent when you do that, but there's a lot of underlying benefits that happen when you're able to automate these processes as well. Certainly for the finance and accounting teams, right? Just having increased visibility and being able to focus on just those exceptions instead of focusing on everything gives you a lot of control, a lot of comfort in terms of what's happening, and certainly a lot better handle on your cash flow. Another important tenet for us in terms of how we built our solutions is they are highly configurable. And so again, from this time perspective, we're going to grow with you over time. Your business is going to change, you know it is, right? And so we provide you the ability to start small if you want, increase the automation over time, and as your business processes change, you can change how the solution works for you as well. So a lot of underlying benefits, all focused around making sure that you are saving time and increasing your throughput and being able to focus on those prescriptive measures, again, to drive your business forward. Just a sampling of some of the time savings and benefits that can come out of using our solutions. Again, it's, excuse me, it is so easy to implement and very quick to implement and very affordable. Just about any business of any size can benefit. And so you'll see that again as we're going through. Since we're extending an application you already know, very quick to adopt as well. So a lot of introductory thoughts there in terms of benefits and so forth. I think most of this will become very, very apparent as we get through the demo. What are you going to do with all this newfound time? Just a vision, a plan in your head now that we're coming out of winter, maybe a good time to head south. We joke about finding this beach someday, and if you find it first, let us know where it is. All right, so again, we're going to talk about document capture. That's for automating invoices and other incoming documents. We're going to talk about expense management for employee expenses and corporate credit cards, both today. We also have document output. If you'd like to look at that another time, that's for sending out those statements, reminders, confirmations, invoices, any of those types of documents that you want to send out from Business Central or NAV. We can automate that process. We can batch it, send it on a regular schedule, and it keeps complete track inside the system of who got what when. And so very, very simple way of communicating and keeping your vendors and your customers and other stakeholders up to date. Okay, so what about us? We've been around 30 years, and as mentioned, have been focused on time-saving solutions our entire life. And in particular, we've also been focused on Business Central and NAV our entire lives. And so we don't actually work with any other ERP systems, and we don't work outside of Business Central or NAV. You can't run Continia alone. And so you better believe we're very good at running alongside Business Central and NAV. And in fact, we talk about being embedded inside that, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Another key differentiator for us is we work through our partners. And so Innovia already knows your business, knows your folks, knows your business processes. We're not going to, again, cause you to spend more time getting to know us and knowing, teaching us your business and all these things. We're going to go ahead and let Innovia implement and support you. We support them in the background, and they have our full resources and everything else available. But again, simplified for you, especially if you've worked with any other ISVs, add-on products. You know, when you're using the system, sometimes you're not sure who to call with a question. We take that completely away. You just call Innovia, the same as you always do. Coming back to that built inside theme a little bit. What does that really mean, being embedded inside? We actually install code, additional code alongside the Business Central and NAV code. We use the same database, we use the same table, same data, all of those things. So guess what? When you are using the system on a daily basis, you don't have to go to another system. You're already inside BC or NAV, you stay inside BC or NAV. When you make a change in BC or NAV, add a new dimension or whatever the case may be, it's already available as part of the Continia processes. So it's not even an add-on per se. It is because you don't get it with core Business Central or Nav, but then you install it and it's there. And again, a lot of time savings, especially for research. One of my favorite things Chris is going to show you is how quick it is to answer any questions you might have, because again, you're inside the system. All right, with that, let's talk about document capture a little bit. If you are looking for a system to automate your invoices, this is it, because basically anything you needed to do, it can do. Certainly simple invoice creation and routing around for approval inside Business Central or Nav. But if you have complex invoices, 100-page invoices, not a problem. Multiple lines to one item, not a problem. If you want to code invoices to things beyond general ledger accounts, beyond items, not a problem. We can code invoices to dimensions, pretty important, of course. Code it to charge items, to fixed assets, to resources, a lot of options there. Again, back to that configurability point, easier said than done. And so we also do line level matching. We can match to purchase orders and receipts. And in fact, we can handle one-to-many situations. So if you have one purchase order that results in a couple invoices, not a problem. Back to the workflows, we can handle very sophisticated workflows based on a variety of factors. So again, very configurable in terms of matching your business processes. And a nice thing too, we provide you a separate approval portal. So if you have folks involved in the approval process that aren't core BC or NAV users, again, not a problem. They can weigh in, review invoices, and be part of that process. The general flow of what happens, and we're going to walk through this in a second, is your vendors will send invoices into whatever email address you specify, what you come up with, accounts payable at, invoices at, up to you. They'll send those invoices in. If you're still getting invoices in as paper and other formats, not a problem. We can still get that into the OCR service. That OCR service is going to read everything on that invoice, and it all becomes searchable. Whether you capture that Happy Holidays message at the bottom or not formally in your system as a point of data, it's still searchable. And so everything becomes very easily researched after the fact. So after the OCR service grabs the data off that invoice, creates the purchase invoice in Business Central, and again, according to your rules, can be automated as much or as little as you want, send it around for approval. And then the great thing is, this comes up a lot, accounting teams want to know, hey, do I get to see it? Because if you have it automated, ideally the accounting team doesn't need to see it until the very end, but they do have that final check before they post the invoice and create the payable. And so they can review it right before that. And of course, make changes. So that's the general flow. Now, I kind of hinted at this earlier. It's not just for invoices. Document capture can capture any incoming documents. And so depending on your business, maybe you have contracts, maybe you have inspection forms, maybe you have vendor applications coming in, and you want to automate those processes as well, instead of rekeying all that data and so forth, not a problem. We provide you several different, what we call document categories out of the box to handle these different situations, where you can create your own. So it really is very adaptable to a number of business processes, again, saving you time. So we got a lot to go through here, and it is a good time to switch over and take a look at the system. Chris, can you walk us through it?
I am happy to, yes.
Thank you.
Let me share the screen. Just a quick check that you can see Business Central.
Looks good.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. And now the proof is in the pudding, of course. You want to see what we've been talking about. So as Mark indicated, there's different ways how we can receive the documents, but typically they come in via email. Whatever domain and email address you would like to use, you tell us, and we'll help you configure it. Once the documents are emailed in, they get automatically picked up for OCR and imported into Business Central. From that moment on, all data lives inside of Business Central, and we've already centrally stored the files that you received, including the email from the vendor. So the archiving is already taken care of at this point. You don't have to walk around the office with pieces of paper anymore. and we'll show you later how you can retrieve these documents for future purposes as well. Then after they get imported, if it is a known vendor and we've already defined how we want to deal with that vendor, they could either automatically go into an approval process, or they may go straight to the released status if we're matching to a purchase order and or a purchase receipt. If it is a vendor that we've not yet configured, or if we're running semi-automated, then they stay in the ready to register queue until somebody takes action on it. For the purpose of this demo today, I obviously want to walk you through some examples. So I run semi-automated today, but one document is already out for approval, and that's exactly how the AP team could work with it, right? Documents just kind of flow through, and you really only have to handle the exceptions. When we look at the document that's out for approval, we can already see amounts. We see who it's pending approval by. We have due dates, and this data lives inside of Business Central and is therefore something that we can use in Power BI reports or JET reports or whatever you use to inform the other people in the organization about the financials, right? We can drag and drop additional files to it as well. So the AP team, if necessary, has the complete overview. Everything is inside of Business Central, but they don't really have to engage with the documents and the flows unless they really prefer to do so. If we look in the ready to register queue, then we would see a bunch of different document categories. And we've actually just released version 11 of document capture. And that includes additional document categories, most notably for purchase orders. So from now on, we can also automate the creation or updating of purchase orders. Often the purchase order gets created inside of Business Central through another process. It gets sent to the vendor. But the vendor often confirms it with a document, and that states the ultimate pricing, of course. We can consume that document as well and update the purchase order inside of Business Central with that information. So a very powerful addition in the new version of Continia document capture, released right in line with the latest release of Business Central by Microsoft. So we had to wait for that to be released first. But from now on, if you're an existing customer and if you're on Business Central Cloud, that is right away available for you. Now, if I look into the purchase invoice category, then this is a Continia screen, but displayed fully inside of Business Central, right? All data is there, all information is stored there. This image of the document is a result of us processing the document. Standard Business Central does not give that to you. And you keep that view available throughout the lifetime of this document, including in a posted status. Lewis Home Furniture and Coolwood Technologies already have a checkbox that says, okay, so normally these documents would process automatically. We've already defined how we want to deal with this vendor. It knows how to interpret the data, and it knows who is responsible for approving these documents, for example. And I can walk through this. We've defined before too what GL account this gets booked at. That's the default, right? It doesn't mean that it has to go to that GL account. The approvers can update it. And of course, always the people with the right permissions inside of Business Central can update that information. It's just a default so that we can automate as much as possible moving forward. If you would like to teach the system new tricks, you can at all times define what other information you would like to pick up from the document. For example, the posting description, I can simply click on that, drag and drop a box around it, and now that data gets captured. It also automatically remembers that. So next time we receive an invoice from Lewis Home Furniture, it knows how to interpret that piece of data, right? I will never have to type that again. It will automatically pick it up. We also validate things right with Business Central. So in this case, you see we get a warning around the payment terms. They are not in line with the due date that we find on the document. It is a warning. I can decide to ignore it, but we can also configure it that it generates an error, in which case somebody will have to look at it, right? So this comes back to the automating things to the extent that you're comfortable with it. You can define in what scenario you're not comfortable with it anymore and who will have to take a look at it. So you can also assign it to a particular user if there is a particular issue. If there's something up something off with the amounts received, maybe it goes to the warehouse. If it's something around a currency, it goes to the finance team, et cetera, et cetera. So really, even exceptions we can handle as much as possible automatically, so that there's not somebody in finance that has to be a police officer and chase everybody down for this information. The system will do all that for you. Now, I manually have to click on register, but that is normally an automated step, obviously. And you can see here is a open purchase invoice with the original file attached, but also still visible in the view here. The description came over to the line and it's booked to the right GL account. I can send this out for approval, and also that is a step I would normally automate. How do I automate that? Well, and before I go there, actually, you see now the status updated to pending approval, and this document is going first to Richard and then to Annette Hill because it's over Richard's approval amounts. As Mark indicated, the approval flows can be based on many different things. Of course, the standard Business Central approval workflows can be used, and we've built some logic on top of that inside of Business Central. So we can do it based on the line dimension, for example, if that's what you desire. Each vendor has a template card in which we define the rules for that vendor. What steps are we going to take? And as I indicated, we're running semi-automated, and that's simply because the second step is left blank. If I would like to automate it to be automatically sent for approval, I can simply set it to submit for approval, and then moving forward, any new invoice from Lewis Home Furniture will automatically be sent for approval. Of course, you can do this on a master level as well, but we allow you to make a distinction for each and every vendor or groups of vendors if that is the scenario that is better for you. We also have all kinds of matching features, and that is really unique to Continia. We can do that line level matching to the receipt or the order, and that allows us for a 2- or 3-way match on a line level. We can allow for variances. If we turn on line recognition, you get a whole bunch of other options available for configuration, what values in the line need to match. So you can be as strict or as flexible as you'd like to be. For example, if I turn on the unit cost, then you can see we also now can define what the accepted variances are on the unit cost, be it more or less than a couple % or a certain dollar amount. You could still auto approve the invoice because you expect maybe a little bit up or down based on currency difference, for example. Down here, you define what fields are being picked up in the header or in the line. And if you work with other solutions, other ISVs or custom fields, if Innovia enhanced standard Business Central for you, all of that is available for you right here as well, right? So if you have very specific things in your Business Central installation, we can use that information inside of Business Central or in the AP process or any other document handling process as well. Down here, we have an example with Coolwood Technologies, and you see it's been fully matched with purchase order 1003. So this one is defined to be matching. It found the PO number and it was able to match it fully with the purchase. Now, the 2 documents that we've sent out for approval, one that was already there and one that I just showed you, they will notify the system will notify the approvers to approve the documents that they are responsible for. They will get an email with a list of the documents and a link to this web approval portal. So I'm switching roles right now. I'm an approver, say somebody in operations that knew what the goods were purchased for, and therefore has to approve it. In the email is the link. It also works on a mobile phone. So if I'm traveling, I can also approve invoices on the go. I can click on a document, and single sign-on was available, right? So I don't have to remember additional passwords and things like that. I can see the information exactly as it is inside of Business Central. This data is pulled right now from real-time Business Central. I have an image of the document. I can code it. I can even make it a requirement for approvers to select what dimension, for example, is applicable, or what job or task number is applicable to this line or document altogether. I can put comments on it. I can split things out if I have the permission to do so. I can even update the GL account to what is relevant. but I can also limit what approvers can and cannot do right here in the approval portal. So you can also just force them to simply hit approve, reject, or forward it to somebody else. If they want to engage somebody else in the process, they can do so in 3 different ways and put a comment on that as well, of course. But I'll just approve this document quickly and it automatically jumps to the next one. I will approve that as well, and off we go. I have an archive available for me as well, so I can also go back in time, and that looks at all documents as they're stored inside of Business Central. So let's say you implement Continia today, your approvers would be able to go back and see what they paid that vendor last year before you had Continia, because we go directly to the Business Central archives for that information. An out of office is available as well. So if I'm not going to be able to approve, I can assign somebody that approves on my behalf, and automatically the flows will be adjusted. Now back in Business Central, if I refresh the screen, you see we have 1 release purchase invoice that was within the approval limits of Richard Lom. 1 still needs to be approved by the 2nd level approver. And this is how approvals would look like inside of BC. I mean, if you are a BC user, you can of course do your approvals directly inside of BC as well. No need to use the web approval portal if you're already working in BC. I can approve this document and then we're good. We have 2 release purchase invoices. And this could be the very first time that the finance team sees these documents. They can of course go in, they can update what they need to update, and they can post these documents now. So I can post this invoice, and yes, let's post it. There's also a batch post function available. When we open the posted invoice, you can see we keep an image of the document. The file is originally attached as well, so we can go straight to that as well. We also have available a navigate function, so we can see in whichever way this transaction and this documents are linked to other records inside of Business Central. We can go right here to the GL entries, or if we're in the GL entries, we can go straight to the document as it's been attached to the document as well. What is also nice is, sorry, it's right here, the approval log. Auditors love this feature. You can show exactly who approved it and when, especially if there's multiple approvers, you would have multiple lines. You have time-stamped exactly who did what with the document. So you can always pull that up when somebody is requesting that information very easily. The last thing I want to show you when we're talking about pulling things up for approvers or anybody else in the organization is the document search. I can search for anything in the document. I can search for an address field. I can search, of course, for a vendor name, but I can also search for, I think, the term Xiang. You see, we have 3 documents that contain that, 2 of which are registered, 1 is open. When we click on the view document card on the one that's selected, you can see that the term Xiang is used as a project code. We did not pick that information up initially on this invoice. We did not teach it what to do with that piece of information, but I can still search for it. Everything that we OCR is fully searchable. I can also search for the term Radcroft. I can search for the term Ashford. Anything that I would like to search for is available here, including also directly navigating to the file that we received from the vendor, the email that that file came to us with, and also from here, the navigate function, so I can go straight to the GL entries that they generated. And if this is a purchase order related invoice, I go to the purchase order and or the purchase receipt, or plural if there's multiple receipts, right? All of that gets recorded right here in BC, and we hook straight into that. And with that, we're at the end of the document capture portion of the demo. I'll be talking to you later when we're looking at expense management.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I've got too many windows open. I was trying to get back to unmute myself. Okay, let me reshare my screen, and we will start talking about expense management. As a reminder, we'll take questions at the end. Go ahead and pop those into the Q&A, and we will come back to that at the end. Here we go. Okay, that's still not quite right. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about expense management. As you already saw, built inside Business Central. We're focused on saving you time, streamlining processes, but the real key for expense management that you're going to see very quickly is that we focus on this being as simple and intuitive to use as possible. We really do approach this. If anybody's involved in the expense reporting process now, especially from the accounting teams, you know that it's not fun to report expenses, not fun for the employees to gather that documentation, not fun to submit all the expenses. They certainly don't enjoy you having to go bug them, but yes, bug them, you have to. And what we change about this approach is that if we can change the expense submission to be a couple-second process, then guess what? You stand a much better chance of those employees submitting those expenses when those expenses are incurred. You're going to get much better information associated to those expenses because they're not trying to remember 3 weeks later, what was this for, what was the context, what department, or what project that should it be coded to, those kind of things. So we make it very quick, very intuitive to submit those expenses. And interestingly enough, we give you the option to kind of break out of that traditional mode as well. Most companies have grown up with, well, you have an expense report due at the end of the month, and it made sense in that manual context because you want to gather up those expenses and have some orderly process around it. We give you the option with our expense management solution to submit those expenses individually. So immediately that might seem a little intimidating. It's not. It doesn't really change the process. You can still batch approve expenses or handle them in a batch mode, but you can get those expenses submitted on a near real-time basis. And what that means now is, again, better information, and you're also distributing that workload through the month. So you don't have this month-end scramble where you're chasing people down and people have such a large effort involved that they've grown to not like it very much. If they can submit these things in a few seconds throughout the month, it takes all that anxiety and all that effort away. So we'll show you how both those methods work, both individual expenses, but also submitting as part of an expense report. But you have the choice now. You have the option to streamline your processes that way. Of course, again, highly configurable system. So in terms of where do you code these, what options do you provide, what information are you gathering from the folks that are submitting the expenses, all in your control, all set up within Business Central or Nav, and all changeable if you want. Again, all in your control. So a lot of flexibility. We handle, of course, multi-currency. We handle coding to jobs and different departments, different dimensions, all those things. We even have the ability to change what's required based on some of your selections. So a lot of options there. You can even code to different companies and capture those expenses by different companies. So again, a lot of flexibility. We also have integration with Google Maps for capturing mileage. If you do per diems, we can handle that as well. So we'll walk through how all of this works in just a second, but I wanted to give you the process overview. We actually provide two methods to your employees to submit expenses. One is through a phone-based app, which is very easy. Just take a picture of the receipt, fill in the required information, hit submit, you're done. They can also submit expenses through a browser-based portal. And this is how I use it most of the time because I'm at my desk and that's when I buy a lot of things online, right? So I've got those online receipts that are emailed in. So I use the portal, but you can use either, not a problem. Submit those expenses through either of those methods. If you have employees that are using corporate credit cards, same kind of process. The addition is you will establish an automatic feed with your bank. They will send over those expenses on a frequency that you work out with them. It can be several times a day if you want. You'll get that information over, and instead of the employee having to enter everything, it'll actually pop up in their phone app that they just used a corporate credit card. It will show the information that comes across from the bank. They just have to do that additional coding or whatever you specify, attach that receipt, hit submit. Very, very streamlined process. The beautiful thing with all of this for the finance team is you see these expenses as soon as they either are sent over from the bank or the employee starts entering them. There's no mystery, there's no surprise at month end anymore. Complete visibility through the entire process. All of that's gathered up, sent through the approval workflow, very similar to what we've already seen, talked about with document capture. The approvers can approve, reject, and so forth, require additional information. This is all in Business Central the entire time. So again, you see it all the way through. That final step, of course, is posting and gives the accounting team one last view before it hits the books properly. So with that, let's go ahead and step through. Chris, can you do that?
Not a problem.
Thanks.
And we are looking at the app right now. So this is the expense user. And as Mark indicated, there's different ways how the expense can come to the expense user after they've incurred the expense. If they are a corporate credit card user, they would get a notification like you get for the news on your phone. Hey, your corporate credit card was used. Can you send me at least an image of the receipt and potentially some additional information that is relevant for the purpose of your organization, say a job number, a customer that they visited, or anything you would like to capture. The pop-ups show up like the news I mentioned, and they can also just click on open, and they see, in this case, 4 transactions that happened on the corporate Visa. The corporate credit cards allow for a direct feed from Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. We are certified with these credit card companies. In the case of Visa and MasterCard, it's the bank that needs to enable it for you. With American Express, we can obviously go directly to Amex for the corporate credit card feed. If for some reason the live feed is not available, we also made it super easy to upload a CSV file from the bank so you can import the transactions and also at least avoid some manual data entry on that end. If the expense user enters something before it is posted by the bank, which is possible as well, of course, then it will automatically match it together based on the amount and the date and the vendor information. But these transactions were generated by the bank by a transaction on the corporate credit card. And all we need to do as an expense user is go in there, check the information, take a photo of the receipt or attach it if we already have the receipt. And I do in this case on the film roll. So I select the Apple receipt right here. I can see how it's booked. There are some mapping rules that we allow for in the configurations in Business Central. And this, of course, is then also referring to a GL account inside of your Business Central. So all of the setups are still completely controlled inside of Business Central, as all of our solutions are, but we have the benefit here that an outside user can use an app on the phone to help you code these transactions correctly, including department, project. They can split things out, they can add them to a report, or just submit them as a single expense, as Mark indicated. That is often we see customers over time transferring to. It allows them to not have like a cumbersome end of month process, just handle the transactions as they come in. Let me add another transaction here quickly so we have some data to work with throughout the rest of the demo. But I'll submit these expenses and there we go. If people use a car to travel for work, they can also expense mileage. For that purpose, we have an integration with Google. You can enter the coordinates from the location where you're at, or enter a different address, of course, a to address, and then Google will calculate where you want to go. And we don't have to even enter an address. We can also just do a keyword, for example. And now we see there's 2 routes available through Google. If we want to look at the specifics, we can zoom into it. We see one is 230 and the other is 243. We obviously took the shortest route. And with that, I say, I don't know, visit client. And the distance is coming from the Google calculation. The amount is calculated later inside of Business Central based on the rules that we've defined there. So I can just submit this. I can create a return as well. I continue from, or just submit it as a one-way trip, which I'll do in this case. There's all kinds of additional rules available. You can do different rates for different tiers of mileages. different groups of people. We can automatically deduct the home commute to the office from it if people go from home. There's all kinds of legislation around that, of course, depending on where you are. So our system foresees in most of that for you already. Per diem is more of a European feature. Instead of submitting expenses for each and every meal we have, for example, we get an allowance based on the duration of our trip for lunch, breakfast, dinner, travel, anything like that. And also there, highly configurable, you can define what categories and what rates are available. If I would like to add all these things to a single report for, say, a conference I went to in a given week, I can do that by just creating a report and then just add the expenses to that report. And then I submit the report as a whole. Or I can, like I just showed you before, submit the expenses one by one. If I did not use my corporate credit card, or if I don't have one, I can also just enter a receipt. I can take a photo. We have OCR available in the expense app as well, so it's going to pick up as much as possible from the receipt automatically, and any additional information can be prompted to be entered. And in that case, it could be a cash or private card situation, in which case we obviously treat the reimbursement differently, right? If it's a corporate credit card, then we're not going to reimburse the expense user for it. But if it's a cash or a private card, we need to reimburse them, and therefore we would handle that differently inside of Business Central as well. We can also, based on the expense type you pick, require additional information. For example, if I say I had food with guests, I now have to enter the attendees that were with me. So based on the rules you define, you can request additional information. We have several clients that have an expense type billable, and then they are going to force the expense user to enter the customer name or the project number, for example, so that the finance team knows and has all the information to correctly book the payment by the customer for the expenses incurred on that trip, for example. There is history available as well in the app. So also that is going to save a lot of time for the admins. They're not going to get questions on, hey, has it been reimbursed? Has it been approved? The expense user can look that information up right here inside of the app as well. Now let's go to Business Central. There is a synchronization that runs automatically, typically every 15 minutes or so, but you can always click on it as well, and then it will run a sync with all the different expense users and the data. It's a push and pull, right? So anything that got updated in Business Central, new dimensions or anything like that, will get pushed to the expense users as well. There's a sync that runs on their end too. And we see we have 2 newer updated expenses and 1 mileage. The 4 corporate credit card expenses are still pending. We have 1 mileage pending, but if we zoom into that, you will notice that those expenses that have been submitted, the hotel bill, for example, the receipt is already visible inside of Business Central. So that is information that is now available for the admins to interact with if they would like to, but we're now waiting on pending approval for those 2 expenses that have been submitted. The others are still pending the expense user because the attachments are missing, right? So no need to chase anybody yourself, unless you would like to, of course. The system will keep reminding them, both the expense users and the approvers, that we need their input on some of these expenses. So now to the approval process, similar to what you saw with document capture, the same web approval portal. So if you use both our products, you obviously only have 1 version of the web approval portal. The approvers would get a notification like, hey, somebody from your team submitted some expenses. We would like you to approve those. In that email, again, is a link to this web approval portal. They're brought over to it, and they can look at the expenses. They can help coding this again correctly. They can say, for example, what department something needs to go to, what project it was. They can change the expense type if they need to, or they can simply just hit approve again, and I'll do the same for this one. And now when we go back to Business Central and I refresh the screen, we have 2 expenses ready to post. So when we go there, this again could be the first time that the finance team sees it. They see it's been approved by Richard Lum on behalf of the group finance. So it was a group approval rule. You can obviously make that an individual as well, typically the manager of the employee. And from here, I can post these expenses. both of these are set to be matched to a bank transaction. So they actually, in this case, even originate from a corporate credit card transaction. If that's the case, we're going to automatically reconcile all corporate credit card expenses against the bank account that we initially parked these transactions on inside of Business Central. So we use the bank reconciliation module from Business Central to reconcile these transactions. It also means we're not going to reimburse any of these things. It is just for our administrative purposes that we collect this information and we store and archive it away in case we get audited and need to look up any of this information. Those transactions that are not matched to a bank transaction are reimbursable, and then typically our clients set up their employees as a vendor. It is booked on their vendor card, and then whenever you're ready to reimburse the employee, say once a month or twice a month, you just run it as a vendor payment. It collects all the different payments on the vendor card, and you pay the total, and they get reimbursed as such, either by check or ACH, however you have payments set up inside of Business Central. And that is really what I wanted to show you on expense management today. Back to Mark, and I think maybe some questions also.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Let me go ahead and grab this back and, okay, that's, no. There we go, now it's showing correctly, okay, boy. So just as a quick wrap up, we've really hit this point hard. We're here to save you time and again, be able to reallocate your team on things that are a lot more important to driving your business forward. We love hearing those kind of stories. Just a couple quick examples here from some of our customers. 24,000 installations globally, a lot of great stories out there. So with that, we have a tremendous number of resources and further product information, and as mentioned, our online help documentation, also our on-demand training, all available at continia.com. Certainly follow up with your Novia specialist and tell them you are inspired and would like to know more, and they can guide you through the process of how to get going. And we look forward to hearing a great story from you as well. So with that, would love to entertain any questions. I did put some contact information in the chat there. I don't see any questions in the panel here, but we can hang on for another minute or two here, see if any pop in case folks are typing. Chris, I did have a question for you. We release our new versions twice a year to synchronize with the Business Central updates that Microsoft does in April and October. I think we've got a release coming out. Is it this week? And what's the big hoopla about it?
Well, I think it's already done. It depends a little bit where you are geographically, I think, because Microsoft rolls out the latest version of BC in different weeks for different geographical areas. But I think the US and North America as a whole has been done now, or people can access the latest version of Business Central. And with that, they will also be able to get the latest version of Continia, document capture and expense management version 11. Some really cool features in there, really doubling down on the integration. I mentioned earlier, we now also automatically and out of the box can support the generation or updating of purchase orders. We will now also automatically handle item charge assignments, big in the food industry, obviously. And another cool one is that we can include any prepayment rules that have been defined inside of BC as well. So really going that next level integration that we always try to achieve.
That's just a very quick summary of many updates across our solutions. But yeah, just knowing from the demos that we do, those are some pretty key points for a lot of customers. So that's exciting to see. I do not see any questions in the Q&A panel, so I think we'll call that a webinar. And Angie, I guess this is going to be saved off onto the website for people to reference.
Yes, thank you, Mark and Chris, for presenting. And for all of you on our webinar, or if you're watching on demand, we will have this up on our on-demand webinar library on our website at inovia.com for you to reference back to, and we will publish it on YouTube as well. And I'll be sending everyone who registered the recording, so you'll have that for reference.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Inovia. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And Angie, as always, thank you for coordinating all of this and keeping us straight.
You are welcome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's inovia.com/events. You can also check out our training workshop page at inovia.com/workshops. We have a variety of workshops to fit your role, so check out the ones that are right for you and your team. If you have not heard the latest Inovia Conversation podcast, we have a library of podcast episodes for you to listen to, and you can learn more on our podcast page, and that's inovia.com/podcast. Browse through our selection and subscribe so you'll get notified when those new episodes air. And we are just 5 weeks away from our annual customer conference. You can learn more about our conference at inovia.com/conferences. The Inovia Customer Conference is a free event for you to attend, so check out our conference page to learn more and register for our event. You can also register for Dynamics Con Live. Both conferences are back-to-back at the same venue starting on May 21st. So register now so you don't miss out on these two great events. And while you're there in Arizona with us, you can also meet Continia. Mark and Chris will be there, so you can set aside some time to personally meet them. All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Inovia webinar. Take care, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.